What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly Sports History for December 27th, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. As always, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, who was the greatest Eagle ever? And everybody, as expected, was across the board. I think part of it was my own fault for being vague in what the question was. I guess there's a difference between being a great Eagle and the best Eagles player ever, as someone pointed out to me, because you had guys like, well, somebody said Jason Kelce anyway, but Jason Kelce might not be the best player in Eagles history, but certainly would be in the conversation for greatest Eagle in history. We had some people bring Chuck Bednarik up, got some votes, but then guys like Tommy McDonald or Vince Papale being great Eagles, not necessarily the greatest Eagle player ever. So that one's on me as far as a player, but Reggie did slightly edge out Brian Dawkins in the votes. But thank you for everybody who did participate, as well as people who were asking for the clarification, because that is a very, very big difference. You have the guys that are the ambassadors who are great Eagles, but not necessarily the greatest Eagle player. So a guy like Vince Papale certainly fits that category. A guy like Tommy McDonald, may he rest in peace, certainly fits that category. But Jason Kelce obviously could fit into both categories. I'd actually decided to debate it, including Jason Peters in there for the same reason, but it's kind of tough with offensive linemen. But again, thank you for participating. If you have any more on this, as far as who's the greatest Eagles player versus who's the greatest Eagle, let me know. Text and send your voicemails to the text line, 267-495-8531. Let me know what you're thinking. Again, that's on me for the ambiguity of the question. But I think you could include some on both sides. But I certainly think greatest Eagle versus the greatest Eagle player. There definitely could be two different ways you go with that. So if you have any more on that, hit up the voice and text line, 267-495-8531. Send a text message, leave your voicemail, let me know what you're thinking. All right, quick programming note / housekeeping. There will not be a new Back to the Future this week. I figured what I was going to do was kind of do a best of, but I think rather than do a best of, I'm just going to give you some episodes from the archives from this year that you can listen to that fit in with what we're saying, because there is certainly some overlap between what I do here on This Day in Philly Sports History and Back to the Future. I do think I'm going to sit down this week. I've carved out some time to try to do some planning moving forward to see what we're going to do with Back to the Future. It's definitely going to be an every other week thing, and I'm not sure how it's going to fit in. I'd like to save it for more interview type things. I have some people I have lined up for interviews. Certain things need to happen first before I'm able to do that. So stay tuned for that. But this week we're going to be doing no new episode. It's a best of week, but I will be giving you an episode each day between now and probably the middle of next week, once the new year hits, of just episodes that fit in with what we're talking about that day. So, excuse me, stay tuned for that. In the meantime, like and subscribe. Back to the Future with a PH. And you can have access to all the archives and go back through and see what we've been doing. Certainly have improved since July of 2021 with what I'm doing here. So I'm looking forward to that. But be sure to go check that out. July of 2022. It seems like, I don't know, it just is part of my normal routine now. But go like and subscribe. While you're at it, like and subscribe this. Hopefully you took and told Grammy and your Uncle Joe and Cousin Eddie about the podcast, and they're listening too. And if you're listening, Grammy, Cousin Eddie, and Uncle Joe, welcome. And if you are a new listener, welcome. I like to have a little bit of fun, just trying to educate the masses while being a little bit entertaining. But be sure to like Back to the Future with a PH wherever you get your podcast. All right, Sixers. They are in action tonight against the Magic. There is no Joe tonight. He's still out with that sprained ankle. And I think this early in the season, you never want to see Joe get injured, so don't take it that way. But I think this early in the season, getting some of the role players and guys on the bench some run with the first team, I think is good. And we saw that, and we'll talk more about it later in this episode, but we saw that last year, especially come playoff time when it really mattered and some of those guys stepped up. So it is a good thing for them to get the run with the ones. I do want to see Maxey elevate his game when Joe's out. This year, he hasn't played well. This is be Joe's 5th game he's missed. The Sixers are 0-4, so they certainly need to find a way to win without him. But I think Maxey really needs to elevate his game, like his shooting and everything. And I don't know whether it's because he's not able to create shots the way he does when Joe's in there. But that's something I want to see him get better at and really step up. Because I think, to me, in order to be that, I keep throwing around this term, the bona fide superstar. And I think he's there. But I think for everybody else and the rest of the league to see it, he needs to step up and do something big when Joe's not there. He's certainly capable of doing it. And he did it at times last year, but there was also James Harden there. I want to see him do it like today. It'd be a great time down in Orlando to just blow up and have a game and really be the guy. Because I think, to me, that's the one thing that's holding me back. I know I keep saying it about him being a bona fide superstar, but I want to see him do it without Joe. And Joe obviously is the best player on the planet right now. So, no, of course he's going to make everyone better, but I need to see Maxey be better on his own without Joe. Looking forward to that tonight. All right, let's put a bow on this Eagles game against the Giants. First and foremost, a win is a win. And I do think they were uptight, and I think that was obvious when it was a freak fumble. It was a freak sort of thing to start that second half. And it almost got the sense the way the rest of that game turned out. They were like, oh, shit, here we go again. Where earlier in the season, it was the opposite. They were like, how are we going to win this game? I almost got the sense that they were like, oh, shit, how are we going to lose this game? And they definitely played uptight and played differently. Everybody seemed uptight in the second half. And you hear it with guys like Devontae Smith still saying we're not playing well. A.J. Brown saying, I'll take the fine. I'm not talking. I don't have anything good to say. And I think that, to me, I saw more heart in them the way they came out last week. And I think the fact that they care this much, I think they're getting it. I'm hoping now that this changes now. We say how losing is contagious. Talk about it all the time, like how that big snowball, and once it's hard to stop. I know we've done some things on the 64 Phillies, and they said the same thing. Like once they lost, they knew they were going to lose. So winning is good. So the fact that they won kind of end it and stop that. Hopefully now they can start building that momentum over the next couple of games and start getting sharper and crisper as they go. An interesting thing I saw, Reuben Frank had his observations, I guess it was yesterday in the paper, and the first thing he said was everybody's blaming Brian Johnson and the play calling, and it's something I've been saying for a while. It's more the execution, because he said most of the Eagles' pass plays, they have the short dump-off route, they have the medium route, and then they have the deep route, but it seems like Jalen is looking for the deep route first. And then by the time he's doing that, he's losing all of the other things. And that's on the quarterback. That's not the play calling. The play calling if it's there, take it. But when he's forcing it into double coverage, and you're forcing it when Quez Watkins is covered, and all of those things, that's kind of on the quarterback. So that's something that he needs to clean up. And I think it's the execution. Again, Rube, if you're listening, I'll do a guest spot, but it's something I've been talking about for a few weeks now. They're not executing. It's not the play calling. Yes, they need to run the ball more, but the play calling that is happening, the pass plays, their guys are open. Jalen's just not hitting the guys. So I think based on the fact that they stopped the bleeding now with the win, now it's time to reset. You have 2 last games to get it back. And if you remember back in 2017, they would look like crap heading into the playoffs after Wentz went down. Like Foles had the good game against the Giants, but that game against the Raiders on Christmas Day, the offense looked terrible. And they didn't really look that hot in the first playoff game either against the Falcons. So I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying it's okay to hopefully now I want to see them start building on that, but they need to get it figured out. And I think it starts with the quarterback and the execution. And Rube, again, one of his other observations, please, if you're listening, give me a shout out or something in one of your columns, Rube. But he also mentioned the whole 6 of the last 24 Super Bowl winners have had 3-game losing streaks or something along those lines. Whatever stat I gave, 6 of the last 3 went to the Super Bowl, or 24 went to the Super Bowl. I was talking about that the other day. So, Rube, if you're listening, hook a brother up. And I know people are out there listening. Just come on, man. Let's like and subscribe. Get this going on. But I do think putting a ball in the Giants game, I think that play to open up the second half, things were looking good. They played with a lot of heart, I thought, minus Jalen not running out of bounds on that field goal attempt and then getting lucky. That's just a bonehead play. But I think they're all trying to do too much. I think they need to get back into themselves. It's kind of like a baseball team when they're in a slump and they start pressing and trying to do too much and stretching singles into doubles and doubles into triples. And you just need to relax, let the game come to you and not play hero ball and take what the defense has given you and execute. That is the word of the day, boys and girls. Execute. They're not executing, but they're back home on Sunday against the Cardinals in what apparently wasn't going to be a big game now is a big game. They can clinch the division, so let's get this done and then play for that number 1 seed. I almost would rather them have to play the starters at least a half against the Giants the following week in order to get out of the funk, depending on what happens. And the way it's setting up, it's going to be in play, depending, I guess, on what happens with the Niners. No word. Brock Purdy had a stinger. Doesn't, according to my fantasy thing on ESPN, it doesn't look like he's not going to play. But you never know because it's his second one of the year, whether that's something to be concerned about moving forward. I'm thinking of maybe making the swap to Tua. If you want, let me know on the text line, Tua or Brock Purdy for the Super Bowl, 267-495-8531. But that does lead us to today's question of the day. Are the Eagles on the road back based on what you saw against the Giants? Are they on the road back, and how are we feeling? Let me know your confidence level on a scale of 0 to 100. What is your confidence level on this team moving forward? 267-495-8531. Get your answer in. Are they on the road back, and what is your confidence level of this team? 267-495-8531. All right, I went to Target yesterday. It wasn't as crazy as I thought. That means it's raining today. Might be even crazier today. If you didn't go out and spend your Christmas cash yesterday, don't. Stay at home. Get on your computer. Log on to phillygoat.com. They have all of your Philly sports apparel needs covered. They have Philly-centric neighborhoods. Ryan does a great job over there. So go to phillygoat.com. Do a little bit of shopping from your couch on this rainy when I don't work, this rainy Wednesday, do some shopping from your couch. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off. Why go out in the rain when you don't have to? Everything is right there. I'm telling you, Flyers are coming back. Get one of those awesome Quaker shirts. They got you covered. phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery. All right, today we're going to go back to 1987 and almost as kind of a continuation of what we were talking about yesterday. Yesterday we talked about the passing of Reggie White, but today in 1987 the Eagles beat the Bills 17-7 to close out what as an interesting season would be an understatement. 1987 was. Anthony Toney had 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. Keith Byers had 102 rushing yards. I think the Eagles had over 200 rushing yards total that day. Reggie White, though, had 2 sacks to finish at 21 almost had his 22nd, which would have tied the record with Mark Gastineau. But Jim Kelly was able to slip out. He had his hand on his shoulder. Jim Kelly was able to slip away. And basically, back then, too, surprisingly, this wasn't called a sack. It technically could have been in the grasp, and Buddy Ryan was pissed after the game, saying the refs cost Reggie the sack record. But Jim Kelly was able to throw an incomplete pass, and Reggie did not get to tie the sack record. But I think it's important, as I talked yesterday about, Reggie did that in 12 games. 21 sacks in 12 games. So had it not been for the players' strike and then the replacement players coming in, Reggie would have had the sack record. So TJ Watt, Michael Strahan, whoever, Reggie White to me is the sack champion. He holds the sack record. He is the sack king. And there's no debate in it. I mean, say what you want, no debate. But that game, he did break the NFC sack record of 20.5, which was set in 1986 by Lawrence Taylor. Now, back to the interesting 1987 season for the Eagles. They went 7-5 if you take away the replacement player games. And I think they went 0-3, and Buddy Ryan famously said that they have they had the worst replacement players, and like he was just like, and he didn't care. He was just like, whatever. But they were a team that was on the brink. And I think it's important to realize that, man, that team missed 4 games that year. That young core of that team missed 4 games, and it just was probably really crucial to their development. But hopes were high in Philly. As I was going back reading through the papers about this game, they said it was a good way to end the season and get ready to start the 88 season. We know they would go on to win the division in 1988. But on this day, the Eagles beat the Bills 17-7. Reggie White with 2 sacks, falling just short of tying Mark Gastineau's sack record, but he did it in 12 games. So as far as I'm concerned, Reggie White, you are the sack king. If you want more on this 87 team and the Buddy Ryan era, this will be your Back to the Future archive of the day. Go back to January 5th of 2023. I did the whole thing on Buddy Ryan, and I really went into how this strike season really messed with their development and things like that, because they didn't have the chance to really gel, and like 25% of the season for a team that is looking to really, I don't know, like cement itself as one of the best. And we know that they ultimately came out and just, I mean, they ended up being a dominant defense, but the offense never really had a chance to catch up. So I wonder how much that 25% played into it. But if you want to check out some more on the Buddy Ryan era and his whole tenure and how that went down, January 5th of 2023, the first episode of the new year, I believe, of Back to the Future. Go check it out. Again, be sure to like and subscribe. Grammy, Cousin Eddie, Uncle Joe, go check out some of the other archives. You're going to love it. I promise you. But on this day in 87, the Eagles beat the Bills 17-7, and Reggie just missed the sack record. But in my opinion, you are the sack king, my friend. All right, today, our Philly sports top moment of the year. We're going to go back to the Sixers-Celtics Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. If you remember, Joe was out. He sprained his knee in the playoff series against the Nets. Basically, it was the James Harden show, and everybody really stepped up on that game for that game. Tyrese Maxey had his 26, and Tobias Harris had 18, and even I can never say his name. DeAnthony Melton got into the fray as well. The Sixers had 17 threes, including 5 by DeAnthony in the first half. They had 17 total for the game, though. Think about that. 17 3-pointers for the game. And they needed every single one of them. And it just was just outstanding. Harden had 45. He had 40 in a later game. But that team, and just still frustrates me to no end as I was researching this, they were up 3-2 in that game, and then Doc pulled a Doc and blew it. They went to Game 7. Jason Tatum just went off, and the rest, as they say, is history. But for a moment, man, we were riding high. I just remember waking everybody up in this house at the end of that game. Harden was just clutch. We all know how that played out with Harden after that. But our Philly sports moment of the year was the Sixers-Celtics Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Sixers winning 119-115 to take a 1-0 lead in that series that would go 7 games. I will say this too. It's just, it was all downhill from there. But that's our top moment. And remember, I'm not doing these in any specific order, just doing it as they kind of come up. So that is today's moment. On this day, back in 1987, Eagles beat the Bills 17-7. Reggie White with 2 sacks, Anthony Toney with 2 touchdowns, setting the stage for the 1988 season when the Eagles would win the NFC East and go to the playoffs. More on that season coming up later this week. Sixers in action against the Magic tonight. Be sure to let me know what your thoughts are on the Eagles. Are they back? Will they get this together in time for the playoffs? And what's your confidence level? 267-495-8531. Text or leave a voicemail. Let me know what you think. 267-495-8531 gets you through. All right. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourself some Wednesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.